Growing up, it was just me and my mom. My dad left when I was little, and he's just a faint memory now. My mom worked really hard, taking on multiple jobs to keep us going and to make sure I could focus on school. Because of her efforts, I got a scholarship that helped me get through college without a lot of debt, which is rare these days. I studied business management because I wanted to succeed and never be as poor as we were when I was a kid. After graduating, I moved to the city. It was tough at first, living in a tiny apartment and eating instant noodles more often than I'd like to admit. But I got a job at a big company, starting as a junior and quickly working my way up. A few years later, I wasn't just an employee. I was running a whole department. It was more than a job to me. It was my domain. I made sure everyone knew they were important. I always told the new employees, treat this job like it's yours, and soon enough, you'll be leading the team. The team was great, full of good people. When I got promoted to head of the department, we celebrated at a local bar. It was a cozy place with cold beer and lots of laughs. Here's to Michelle, the boss lady. Samuel, one of my oldest colleagues, said, raising his glass. Everyone joined in, and the sound of clinking glasses filled the bar. Thanks, everyone. We're all in this together. Here's to kicking more butt and taking names. I shouted, and the team cheered. That night, amid the celebrations, I noticed a guy named Scott. He saw me looking and came over with a confident smile. What's the celebration for? He asked, leaning against the bar. Just a little career boost. I'm the new head of my department now, I replied. I tried not to sound like I was bragging. That's impressive. Must be a tough job, he replied, nodding. I'm Scott, by the way. Michelle. Nice to meet you, Scott. We started talking more seriously than I planned. It turned out Scott was a financier who knew numbers like I knew project plans. Over the next 4 months, our casual dates turned into weekends together, and soon I was spending more time at his place than mine. His apartment was amazing, with high ceilings, a stunning view, and a warmth my small rental couldn't match. One evening, as we looked over the city lights from his balcony, Scott turned to me with a serious look on his usually playful face. He took my hands, and I could feel his nervous energy. Michelle, these past months with you have been the best of my life. I know this might seem fast, but when you know, you just know, right? He said, his voice a mix of certainty and hope. I nodded, my heart racing. He pulled out a small box from his jacket and opened it to reveal a sparkling ring. Will you marry me, Michelle? Yes, Scott, absolutely yes, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Just like that, we were engaged. Engaged to a man who really saw me and loved every part of me, even the tough parts. The day I was supposed to meet Scott's parents, I was nervous. As Scott drove us up to a huge mansion with a driveway longer than my entire apartment block, it hit me they were very wealthy. Stepping out of the car, I felt the weight of the place. The house looked like something out of an old British movie, all brick and ivy, with gargoyles staring down like they knew I didn't belong. Scott squeezed my hand as we approached. We walked up to the huge oak doors. You'll be fine, Michelle, Scott whispered, but he sounded like he was trying to convince himself too. The doors swung open, revealing Mr. and Mrs. William. His suit probably cost more than my rent, and her dress looked like something from a magazine. The foyer was massive, with a sparkling chandelier overhead and portraits of stern-looking folks with titles like Sir and Lady. Michelle, lovely to finally meet you. I'm Jacob, and this is my wife Shirley, Mr. Williams said smoothly, with a hint of an English accent. Mrs. Williams smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. Pleased to meet you both, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. As we moved into the dining room, Scott whispered tips about which fork to use, but his words jumbled in my head. Dinner felt like sitting in a freezer, the air cold with judgment. Mr. William pointed to a portrait of a stern-looking man with a thick beard. That's Sir William Blake, a direct ancestor from United Kingdom who came over in the 1900s to establish our family here, he said proudly. Really impressive, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic, but it was hard to eat with every move being watched. I reached for what I thought was the salad fork, but the silence that followed told me I'd messed up. I glanced at Scott for help, but before he could whisper anything, Mrs. Williams' voice cut through. "Perhaps things are done differently where you come from, dear," she said sharply. "Sorry, still getting the hang of all this," I mumbled, my cheeks burning. Scott tried to smooth things over with a story about us, but his parents were more interested in watching me struggle with the dessert spoon. I felt smaller with each course, their stares heavy on my shoulders. After the icy dinner, we moved to the Watertown expansive living room. The plush carpets and heavy curtains made the room feel even more suffocating than the dining hall. I sank into one of the ornate chairs, feeling like an exhibit in a museum about commoners. Mrs. William, perched elegantly on the edge of her seat, leaned forward. "Michelle, dear, tell us more about your family. Your upbringing must have been quite different from ours." I hesitated, feeling Scott's tense gaze on me. "Well, it was mostly just me and my mom. My dad left when I was little," I began. "When I was really young, and I don't remember him much. Mom did everything to raise me on her own. She's a nurse." The room fell silent. Mrs. Williams stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the wood floor like a scream. "This is unacceptable," she declared with disgust. "We are descendants of an ancient English lineage. We have standards and traditions. I cannot, will not, allow my only son to marry someone without pedigree or knowledge of her own lineage." Mr. William, who had been silently observing, finally spoke, each word heavy. "It's essential for us that our family ties are strong and well documented. Michelle, can you even name your great-grandparents?" I felt my face heat up with embarrassment. "Only know about my maternal grandparents," I confessed softly. Mr. William rolled his eyes with clear contempt. "This is exactly what we feared," he muttered. Scott finally intervened, his tone firm but pleading. "Mom, Dad, please. Michelle is kind, hardworking, and she loves me. Isn't that what should matter?" His mother's gaze was steely. "Respect and adherence to our family standards are what matter, Jacob. If Michelle is to join this family, she must learn our ways and respect where she comes from, even if it is nowhere significant." Their words stung, cutting through the warm feelings from earlier in the evening. But Scott was looking at me, his eyes begging me to go along with it. I nodded reluctantly, agreeing to their terms. "Fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll learn about your family and your traditions." Mrs. Williams seemed somewhat pleased by my concession. "Good. You'll start by familiarizing yourself with our family tree and understanding who each person in those portraits is. It's not just about names, Michelle. It's about respect for our lineage." As they continued talking about their expectations, I felt a part of me shrivel up. The evening had turned from a simple meet and greet into a trial by fire. I had agreed to their demands, but at what cost? As the room filled with discussions of ancestors and noble deeds, I couldn't help but feel alienated from these people and, oddly enough, from the parts of Scott that were tied so tightly to them. The weeks following that stiff dinner were a whirlwind. I barely had time to catch my breath between my job and the etiquette and style courses Mr. and Mrs. William insisted I take. My day started with the alarm buzzing before sunrise and ended long after the sun had set, leaving me feeling like a zombie. "Elbows off the table, Michelle," the etiquette instructor gently reminded me during one session. "And remember, the soup spoon moves away from you when you scoop." I nodded, trying to mimic her movements, but my mind was on a million other things, like the pile of work waiting for me at the office and the never-ending wedding plans. "You're doing well," she reassured me, her voice soothing. These things take time to become second nature. I gave her a weak smile. Thanks. It's just a lot, you know. As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Mom. I excused myself and stepped outside to take the call, pressing the phone to my ear while finding a quiet corner in the bustling city. Hi, Mom. I greeted her, my voice more tired than I intended. Michelle, darling, how are the wedding preparations going? She asked, her voice filled with excitement and a hint of concern. Hesitated, not wanting to worry her. It's all good. Learning a lot, even picked up how to waltz. I said, trying to sound cheerful. There was a pause, and I knew she wasn't entirely convinced. You sound exhausted, honey. Are you getting enough rest? You know all this shouldn't be so hard. You need to take care of yourself. I chuckled weakly. I'll try, Mom, but there's a lot to juggle right now: etiquette classes, dance lessons, work, and wedding planning. Just remember what's important, Michelle. It's you and Scott at the end of the day, not all these rules and lessons. Her words were comforting, but as soon as we hung up, the weight of reality settled back on my shoulders. I was caught between pleasing Scott's parents and keeping my sanity. Every day felt like a marathon with no finish line in sight. Back inside, I resumed my training. The instructor's voice became background noise as I practiced the proper way to hold a wine glass, pinch the stem, not the bowl, apparently. In the rare moments of downtime, I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if all this was worth it. The constant scrutiny, the endless classes, the cold looks from Mr. and Mrs. William whenever I slipped up, which was more often than I'd like to admit. One evening, as I was about to fall asleep, my phone buzzed. It was Scott, his text lighting up the screen. How was your day? Miss you. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to tell him everything, to pour out my frustrations and fears, but I held back. Instead, I typed a simple, "Miss you too. Long day, but all good." As I set the phone down, the silence of my apartment felt overwhelming. Was this how it was going to be? Pushing through the exhaustion, smiling through the stress, all to fit into a world that seemed increasingly alien to me. The big day finally arrived. The venue was full of flowers, fancy dresses, and the faces of the city's high society milling about. My stomach was in knots as I stood in my long white dress, trying to catch my breath. My mom came over, adjusting a stray curl on my forehead. "Everything will be just fine, Michelle," she reassured me with a soft smile. I wanted to believe her, but the minute the ceremony began, any hope of a peaceful wedding evaporated. Scott's parents were on a warpath of superiority. Mr. William greeted guests boastfully, and Mrs. William quickly pointed out to anyone within earshot how they had made everything possible. As the guests settled, I tried to mingle, but Mrs. William pulled me aside with a frosty smile. "Michelle, dear, make sure our friends are taken care of. Fetch some drinks. There's a good girl," she instructed, gesturing towards a group of elderly gentlemen discussing politics loudly. But I started, only to be cut off by her sharp glance. "No buts. You're practically family now. Show some initiative," she snapped. Reluctantly, I carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres between tables, my dress trailing behind me. The weight of the fabric and the task made me feel more like a servant than a bride. I caught glimpses of Scott laughing and chatting, oblivious to my plight. As I passed another round of drinks, I overheard Mrs. Williams' voice rise above the chatter. "Michelle will be serving us tonight. It's good practice for her, don't you think?" Her tone was condescending, her eyes scanning the crowd for approval. That was the last straw. I'd approached her, my hands shaking slightly, but my voice firm. "I am not a waitress at my own wedding. There are staff here who are supposed to do this." Mrs. Williams stood up, her expression one of mock surprise. You should be grateful we allowed such a simple girl into our family. Remember your place, Michelle, she hissed, her words like daggers. I felt a flush of anger rise to my cheeks. This is my wedding, not a performance for your friends, I said, louder than intended. The room fell silent, and all eyes were on us. Scott, catching the tail end of our exchange, stumbled over with a glass of champagne in hand. What's going on here? He slurred slightly, his eyes not fully focusing. Your mother is treating me like a servant at our wedding, Scott. This isn't what today is supposed to be about, I said, frustration boiling over. Scott looked between me and his mother, his expression clouding. Michelle, why are you making a scene? Just do what my mom asks. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Scott, this is our day, and your mom is ruining it. I shot back, disbelief and hurt swirling together. He took a long sip of his champagne before speaking. Look, Michelle, you should be happy I even chose you. There were plenty of girls better than you, prettier, richer. You're making a fuss over nothing. His words stung like a physical slap. I recoiled, the realization hitting me hard. The man I loved, the man I was about to marry, didn't see us as partners. To him, I was just another accessory, something to be molded into the perfect image his parents wanted. As I clutched my bouquet tighter, feeling like I might crumble right there, my mom came over. She took one look at me and wrapped me in her arms, giving me a hug that seemed to hold the world at bay. Honey, do you love this man? Do you really want to marry him? She whispered, her voice filled with worry. I shook my head, barely able to speak. No, Mom, I can't do this. I don't want to. Mom nodded, her jaw set in that determined way I knew all too well. She gently took the bouquet from my hands and guided me to a chair, her touch reassuring. Then, with surprising sprightliness, she approached the DJ, asked for the microphone, and turned to face the gathered crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Her voice, clear and steady, cut through the murmurs, drawing every eye in the room to her. There was a hush, the kind that precedes a storm. She took a deep breath and turned to face Mr. and Mrs. William directly. I have something important to share about truth and pretense, she began, her gaze unwavering. I went to the same school as Jacob and Shirley William. Back then, they didn't have an English accent or talk about noble blood. Their families were hard-working folks just like ours. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jacob's father was a mechanic, and Eleanor's mother served tables at the local diner. She paused, letting the words sink in. The portraits, the accents, the surname, they bought them all to create a past that would hide where they really came from. The room erupted into whispers, guests turning to stare at the Watertown, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. Mrs. Williams stood up, her face red, the facade of aristocracy melting away. That's preposterous, but my mom wasn't finished. To think that you would stand on these fabrications and look down upon my daughter, judging her worthiness based on a lie. Michelle is worth 1,000 of your false titles. She is real, something you've long forgotten how to be. The guests were now openly murmuring, their looks of fascination turning to disdain as they gazed at the Watertown. Mr. William tried to speak, his accent slipping into something less refined, more desperate. We did what we thought was best. For whom? My mom cut him off, her voice fierce. For your son, for society, or just for your own shallow pride? The confrontation had drawn everyone's attention, and now the room was buzzing with tension and revelations. The Watertown seemed to shrink, their grandeur dissolving, leaving only the plain truth of their origins. Scott's face twisted with a mix of shock and anger. He stormed up to me, his voice barely a hiss as he leaned close. You've ruined everything, Michelle. You've disgraced my family, and now you're questioning if I want to marry you after this spectacle. His words stung, but before I could respond, he grabbed my arm, pulling me closer. I'll teach you how to be a good wife, one who knows her place and obeys." His threat hung in the air, heavy and chilling. I pulled my arm back with all my might, stepping away from him. The room was dead silent now, everyone's eyes on us. This was the man I had intended to marry, the family I was about to join. No, this couldn't be my life. I took a deep breath, my mother's earlier strength flowing through me. "There will be no wedding," I announced loudly, making sure every guest heard. "I regret that I ever considered marrying someone who truly matches the arrogance and deceit of his parents." Murmurs filled the room, some of shock, others of support. Scott stood there, mouth agape, as if trying to catch the words and stuff them back into my mouth. My mother came to my side, her presence a comforting shield against the chaos. Together, we walked through the crowd, our heads held high. In the weeks that followed, news of the Watertown disgrace spread through the city. Their fake lineage and high society standing crumbled like a house of cards. People who once revered them now crossed the street to avoid their shame. They sold their mansion and moved away, seeking a fresh start where their past wouldn't haunt them. As for Scott, I heard bits and pieces, rumors of a downward spiral, nights spent trying to drink away the scandal. I didn't know if they were true, and frankly, I didn't care. He had shown his true colors, and they were too dark and twisted for me to ever look back. "Thank you, Mom," I said to her one evening as we sat in our modest living room, a stark contrast to the opulent falsity I had almost married into. "For everything. For being there, for standing up for me, for helping me see the truth before it was too late." She took my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'll always be here, Michelle. You are my daughter, and I raised you to be strong and true. No man, no family can ever make you less than what you are." We sat there, the TV chattering in the background, a normality that felt refreshing. I had lost a fiancé but gained back my life, my self-respect, and more importantly, my future. After the whole wedding debacle, going back to work felt like walking into a sanctuary. My colleagues, who had heard about the chaos, were nothing short of supportive. "Michelle, you dodged a bullet, girl," Samuel said as soon as I walked into the office. He was leaning against my desk, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand, which he handed to me as a peace offering or maybe a welcome-back gift. "Thanks, Samuel. Feels good to be back," I replied, taking the coffee and savoring the familiar bitter warmth. "And yeah, that bullet was more like a cannonball." Nicole chimed in from her cubicle across the way. "Anyone who makes you serve guests at your own wedding is no husband material. You deserve way better, hun." I smiled, grateful for the camaraderie. "I think so too. It's nice to be back where I'm appreciated for what I do, not for the family I might have married into." As the days turned into weeks, the support from my team never wavered. During this healing time, I met Robert. He was a friend of a friend, just a genuine guy with a quick smile and an easygoing attitude that was infectious. We met at a small get-together, just a few friends hanging out on a Saturday afternoon. He was there, laughing at something silly when I walked in. "Hey, you must be Michelle," he said, standing up to greet me. "I've heard a lot about you. All good things, I promise." "Thanks, Robert. I hope they didn't embellish too much," I replied, trying to match his easy demeanor. We hit it off instantly. His family was the polar opposite of the Watertown. The first time I met his parents, they welcomed me with warm hugs and genuine smiles. "Michelle, we're just glad Robert found someone who makes him so happy," his mom said, pulling me into a hug as soon as I stepped through their front door. It was refreshing, the simplicity of it all. No pretenses, no demands, just mutual respect and acceptance. Robert and I weren't rushing anything. We were taking our time getting to know each other beyond the surface level. Back at work, my boss called me into his office one day. "Michelle, I just want to say we've all noticed how you've handled everything. It's not been easy, but you've managed to keep your performance top-notch." I nodded, unsure where this was leading. "We think it's time for another promotion. You've proven you can handle just about anything, and your leadership has never wavered." Leaving his office, I felt a surge of pride. With a new relationship developing, a career on the rise, and the respect of those I cared about, I was finally in a place where I felt I belonged.